Okay, minus 2 times b times c times cosine a. So you have those written down somewhere, and eventually, well, like I always give it to you. I wouldn't expect you to memorize that ever, so just as a heads up. So let's just plug in what we know. It's gonna look a little different because usually we're given an angle, and in this case, we need to find an angle. So we throw things in. So I actually, this time, know side A. I feel like that's usually what we're solving for. So that's a little different, just throwing something on that side. Side B is 18, so that would be 18 squared. Side C is 28. I'm a parenthesis user. You don't necessarily need the parentheses because nothing's really negative, but you know, when you're a math teacher, you like parentheses. And then times cosine A. All right, so I plug everything in and I'm like, all right, well, that's good. Now my main goal is with this whole side, this has a whole bunch of stuff, but I just want to solve for that. So basically this means we just have to move a bunch of stuff. That's really all it is. So in order to do so, you have to do things in kind of a certain order. The reason being, we call this is just like a regular number here. It's kind of just standing on its own, you square it, great. That number is kind of on its own, great. The thing that happens is all this is connected with multiplication. So what I usually do is I kind of like box this in just to remind myself that's all connected. I can't just, add or subtract that stuff as I want. So I'll deal with that in a second. What I want to do is move these things first because they're just kind of chilling there on their own. You can square that. I don't want to have to rewrite it 1,000 times. I'm going to be honest with you. So what I do right from here is I say, I want to move this and this. They're both positive. So I'm going to subtract 18 squared. Once again, and I just do this in my calculator so I don't have to rewrite it 1,000 times. And I'm going to subtract 28 squared. So I want to move both of those kind of original numbers that are chilling on their own. And then I just do that part of my calculator. You can square all of them and then find them and then subtract them, but I find it easier or just like less writing this way. So I just throw in my calculator 12 squared minus 18 squared minus 28 squared. And that gives me negative 964. Okay, good stuff. Equals. So once again, I all that stuff that was being multiplied, I kept together. I always kind of throw something around it just to remind me. Those are kind of stuck together. You can't just add or subtract stuff. These things are kind of just chilling on their own. So if I want to move them, since they're positive, I subtract them. So I move them to the other side using subtraction, and I just do that in my calculator. So now we have what's kind of left over here. What I am going to do is I'm going to multiply these numbers out just so I have one number. So I grab my calculator. I'm going to do, it's negative 2 or minus 2 times 18 times 28. And that gives me negative 1,008 cosine A. So we're not getting nice numbers. That's okay. They end up being kind of weird and big sometimes. So once again, move kind of the numbers on their own. We got negative 964. On this side, what was left, all the stuff that was being multiplied, I actually multiplied it together just to get a number in front. And that's getting multiplied by cosine A. So our main goal is, once again, to get A by itself. So I'm going to divide by that number in front. So sometimes what people want to do is they want to start adding and subtracting this stuff. Well, you can't add and subtract it because it's connected with multiplication. And the opposite is division. So what do I get? I'm going to divide that out. Negative 964 divided by negative 1,008 is 0.956. Now remember, our main goal is to get A. If I have cosine A, anytime you want to find an angle, we always do the inverse. That should sound familiar to us because we've done inverses a few times. And that, my friends, will give us our final answer, which is, I don't know because I just hit the wrong button, 0.956. 17, I'm just going to say 17. It's like 17.0 something. So this one, there's a little more work, right? The other ones you just kind of plugged in and you were done. I always love those ones where they give you the angle. When you have to find the angle, it's not necessarily the worst thing because most of it's done in your calculator again. But there's just a little bit of good old algebra. So rearranging an equation, trying to solve for something. But you're gonna notice we literally do those steps every time. The only difference in the next few problems is the numbers will change, that's it. So I'll leave that up for a second, because I know at home it's always takes a little longer. And it's first period, so we're always a little slower anyways, to be honest. Let me just check, I keep checking attendance, because I just don't want anyone to get my absence if you're here. Sometimes we struggle. The struggle is real, my friends. Give you about 30 more seconds. We're literally gonna do like maybe 2 more, so we won't kill ourselves. All right, let's do another one. This is someone's gonna have a little energy in here, guys. Woo! Solve for, ooh, this time we'll solve for B. How exciting. Let's see, we got A is 30 yards. B is 17 yards. And let's see. All right, let me give you the formula too, because we're solving for a different angle this time. Once again, it kind of looks similar, but just letters are in different spots. So it's B squared equals A squared plus C squared minus 2 times A times C times cosine B. So I pick it just based on, it says solve for B, so I just make sure I have the one that had angle B. All right, let's throw something in here. So just make sure things go where they need to go. So if it says B squared, we actually have B right here, right? That's 17. So 17 squared equals, A is 30, so that's 30 squared. C is 18 minus 2, and then we have 30 again and 18 again, and then times cosine B. Oh my goodness. So here's what I always do, and I still do this to this day. It's just like a habit I've gotten into. I remind myself, like, okay, I have to move stuff around, but you have to move things in a specific way. This is stuck together with multiplication. So I just remind myself that has to kind of stay together until we can divide. So I'm going to move that stuff outside first by subtracting, and then I can kind of do the multiplication, then I can divide after. But if you get into that habit, it's just like a visual thing to remind you. Some people want to start like adding this. You can't do that. You can't add when it's multiplication, so I do that first. So it's going to look very similar to last time, right? I'm just changing numbers. These two terms here, we call those just constants. They're just regular old numbers. We're going to move them. Since they're positive, we're going to subtract them. So I'm going to subtract 30 squared, and I'm going to subtract 18 squared. Once again, you can find those values if you want. I just find it easier just to do it kind of at once in the calculator. So I figure out what this side is. 17 squared minus 30 squared minus 18 squared is negative 935. Okay, so we kind of took care of everything that was outside of that box there. So now we have to deal with that. And so when I go over to the side, I do multiply these things together just to kind of combine things. And once again, we can see it's multiplication. So make sure it's negative 2. Don't lose that sign. That's the biggest thing that happens. Times 30 times 18 is negative 1080 cosine B. So it'll look almost identical to the last time, just a few numbers changed. And then we do the same steps. We want B, since it's connected to this with multiplication, I'm going to divide by negative 1080. I have no clue what that comes out to. You will get a decimal, and that's perfectly fine. Oops, and I put the wrong number. What did I just do? I was putting decimals, not negatives. Okay, that comes out to 0.866-ish. If you round a little differently, that's fine. I always take that into account. And then remind yourself, well, I don't want cosine B, I just want B. And in order to find an angle, we are going to use the inverse. So the inverse cosine of 0.866 is, I have no clue, so I'm going to put it on, 30 degrees. So if you kind of compare the first one to the second one, they look almost the same, right? The steps are the same. I kind of do the same thing in the same order. It's all just about, numbers will change a little bit, but the process stays the same. All right, we're just going to do one more together. I try to do one of each, like the first one we solved for angle A, this one was B, we'll do one for C, just for fun. Then you guys will just kind of try one and see how you're feeling, and then we'll do that. So let me try to find one more. See, this one will be good. Sorry, I just don't like to erase until I give you guys a few extra seconds. So guys, I was thinking about things to do when we come back, and I remember a few years ago, I was like, really, I don't know, I was just like, we had extra time, or my class convinced me to do something that I was like, I was into it. We did the math behind paper airplanes, and we did a whole design session, and then we flew them, and we went outside. It took like, I'm not joking, a week and a half, so we might,
Do you know if they would push graduation back if enough people are quarantined?
I don't think so. I doubt it.
That's gonna suck.
Well, hopefully just not.
Because if we're so close, then everybody needs to quarantine if someone tests positive.
You have a problem the day before?
I imagine. I don't know. I can't even think. That gives me anxiety. I don't know if they even have a plan. To be honest, I think they're just like going one day at a time at this point. But I'm sure they have backup plans, but I don't know. So we'll see. We shall see. At that time, some of you could actually be vaccinated and like immune. Well, 90% immune, right? If you get a vaccine, who knows? I'm sure they have all sorts of contingency plans. Okay. So, I was going to bring something up, but I'll bring this. All right, one more. You're going to notice it looks basically like Trig is just plugging into formulas, and then the formula is the same way. You do it the same way every time. Okay, last one we'll do together. A is 21 inches. B is 7 inches. And C, 17 inches. So let me put up the version we're doing. I actually never said what to solve for. We're going to solve for angle C, right? Because if I'm given all three sides, I could really solve for anything. So I'm going to use this version of the law of cosines. So I tried to do one of each, 1A, 1B, 1C. It's going to look very similar. So just, if you have a good example, you can always follow the example, just change your numbers. So C is 17, so that would be 17 squared. A is 21, that's 21 squared. B is 7. And then we throw in A and B again here, 21, 7. Oops, and I wrote an A here, and I don't know why I did that, because that should be a C. I am sorry about that. That should be cosine C. I'm a little crazy there for a second. All right, looks pretty similar to the ones we did before. So once again, I know with math, I'm gonna do the same thing every time once I have the setup, so it's just kind of organizing my brain. So I remind myself, all this is connected with multiplication, so that's kind of stuck together. So I stick those together with a little box or circle it or something. And I remind myself, well, these aren't stuck together, so let's move them. Since they're positive, I'm gonna subtract 21 squared. And I'm gonna subtract 7 squared. And then I grab my calculator. Once again, you can find the values first if you want, but I just like to do it kind of all at once. So in my calculator, I just do 17 squared minus 21 squared minus 7 squared. And that gives me negative 201. Okay, so that's bad. So I go back to the right and I say, well, what's left over here? Well, I have all this stuff being multiplied together. So I'm actually going to multiply that just so I don't have so many numbers going on. The big thing is don't forget about that minus or that negative. That's the point. If you forget that one sign, it kind of messes you up. So I just do negative 2 times 21 times 7, and that gives me negative 294. Looks pretty similar to our other problems. At this point, we said, well, our main goal is to kind of just keep getting that C by itself, and I want to get rid of that number in front, so I'm going to divide, since it was connected with multiplication, by negative 294. Okay. I grab my calculator. What am I going to get? It comes out to like 0.684-ish. And then my last step, since I want to find an angle, I do the inverse cosine of 0.684. Remember, 0.684 isn't my angle. That would be way too small. The inverse cosine of 0.684 is, it's like 46.8. I'm feeling just like whole numbers. I'm just going to say 47 degrees. And that, my friends, would be your answer. So if you feel like, hey, this looks like what we just did, it is what we just did, right? They're all the same. The sooner you understand that, the easier life will be. You're just changing a number or two here or there, depending on your problem. That's that. So I'm gonna give you one. Can you just see how far you can get? Anything's better than nothing. Try something. That's all I ask. And then you guys will try for a few minutes. We'll kind of go over it quick, and then I'll just check your notes quick, and I'm not gonna do it today. Weren't you just online?
I was.
Were you on your phone?
I was following.
Just throw it on my desk. Like, all right, last one for the day. And we're gonna solve for angle A. I'll give you the version that you need to. A is 28 feet. B is 15 feet. C is 17 feet. All right, so we're gonna use, since we're solving for angle A, this is the version that has angle A. Okay. So if I gave you those sides, could you, you could do something, even if you were like, I don't know what I'm doing, you could definitely put the numbers in, you can do that, guys. And then can you just see how far you can follow the work that we've done, and relate it to this. And we'll just kind of see how we're feeling. Obviously, we'll practice a little more as we go. But today's just kind of that new step deal. Oh, people at home, I'm just gonna put things for you. Submit a review remote. Okay, so you guys are. So people at home, once you're kind of finishing that one up, we're gonna go over in a minute, but if you wanted to just start uploading what you have, you're more than welcome to. So you're not rushing at the end. And I'll do the work to that in about 2 more minutes. Just as a reminder, we had a little quiz last Friday. I tried to email people if you had missed it, but please, if you see zeros, just let me know. You can make it up. I think I put it up for people on Google Classroom. So that's stuff we don't want to wait till the end of the term for. It's not easy, just forget. So 2 more minutes at home, if you start uploading, that's fine. At least the problems that we did before. All right, I'm just gonna start to go over this one. However far you got is better than nothing. So see what you could do, what you can't do, we can always fix that later, but I'm just getting an idea of how you stand. So everyone should have been able to do this part, right? You can just put a number in for a variable. 15 squared plus 17 squared minus 2 times 15 times 17 times cosine A. I like to remind myself those are stuck together, so I'm gonna stick them. And then I kind of do the same thing every time. I subtract these to move them over. I can just kind of do that math in my calculator, right? I don't want to do it up by hand or even do it individually. That comes out to 270 equals. I just, at this point, now that I see that's all multiplication, I'm going to multiply those. Oops, God, I keep pressing the wrong buttons today. Equals negative 510 cosine A. So just doing that kind of obviously made it a lot easier to deal with. We're going to divide by negative 510. We're going to get a decimal. So that's happened every time. That pretty much is going to happen every time. Negative 0.529 Don't get freaked out if it's negative, perfectly fine. And then to find A, we're gonna do the inverse cosine of negative 0.529. And your final answer should be, I'm gonna say 122 degrees. I'm rounding it, but if you rounded it a little differently, I'm happy. I always give you credit if your rounding's off a little bit. So can you please just see how far that you could go? People at home start uploading. I'm just gonna walk around and check the people's in classes or in class, excuse me. And I'll give you a heads up when you're good to sign off.